website after the session, and also all the presentations and the material we've used. So yeah, so that's just I think that's the housekeeping finished. So right, Richard, if you just move us on to the next slide, please, that'd be great. And so just going to quickly talk to you about what is New Belongings, and the next slide, please, Richard. So New Belongings is not a new idea. It's been started over 10 years ago, first ran between 2013 and 2016, and that tested out some quite significant changes for the leaving care service. The personal advisors to 25, council tax exemption, all saw their origins or part of their origins in the New Belongings programme, which was run at that time by a different charity. And then New Belongings found a new home with us at Core and Voice, with funding from Esme, Fairbairn and the Ziegelman Trust. And excuse me, we've been running the programme from July 19 to July 2022. So if we move on to the next slide. Excuse me. So 16 authorities applied to be part of this round of New Belongings. 8 were selected, and you can see there's quite a geographical spread of authorities there, and we've been working with those over the last 3 years. And the next slide, Richard, please. And the support that was offered to local authorities in the programme that we had was the support was for a direct period of 2 years of work. Really, that's been the direct local authority work. We had our care experience consultants, and we talked about how that role developed and the challenges faced by that in the previous round. So if you want to know more about that, please go back to our website and look up those that session. We invited local authorities to use the Baker-Dixon self-assessment, and we'll explain that a little bit of that to you as we go along. They did the Your Life Beyond Care survey, which we'll talk about as well. And originally we thought we'd have eight visits to facilitate co-production, but we hadn't been really thought about the impact of COVID, or didn't even know about COVID at the time. So basically the whole of our programme has been done online, including our peer support programme. And next slide, Richard, please. So the New Belongings tools, the Your Life Beyond Care survey is something that we've developed here at Core and Voice with our colleagues at Oxford University, and we've had funding from the Hadley Trust and Rees Foundation in conjunction with Rees Foundation. And that survey looks at the thoughts, feelings and experiences of care leavers. What makes life good for our young people leaving care? So it's a different focus to perhaps some of the data that we gather from about our young people and traditionally gather, which is often outcomes orientated, defined by the Department for Education in terms of our statutory returns. So this is really looking at what makes life good for young people. And the local authorities did the survey twice. The first time actually right in the onset of the lockdown, the first lockdown, and the 8 authorities overall had a 50% response rate, varying from 29% to 81%. The second time when we did it, which was in the spring of this year, 45% response rate, but again that sort of range, with a couple of authorities achieving 80+%. If you want to know more about the Your Life Beyond Care survey, please do go to our website. You can pick up further information about that. Local authorities also did the leaving care self-assessment. Now, this was developed in conjunction with the previous rounds that I've mentioned of New Belongings by Joe Dixon and Claire Baker, who's on the call today. And that drew on existing evidence about the duties that local authorities had to do, and it asks a series of questions, and local authorities were encouraged to work with their partners to answer those questions. There was a 10 areas or gold standard areas and a number of statements in which local authorities were asked to rate themselves, and interestingly, um, I think all local authorities really felt that the self-assessment around emotional health and or mental health, as it's called there, was an area that they were struggling with, and that data was then used as the evidence base to form the local authority plans. So that was the evidence base, and if we move to the next slide, we'll see the well-being indicators, and if you will see this, you better look at it in more detail later, but it asks questions about, and Richard, if you just click on now in the pull that there, it asks about whether young people have got trusted adults in their lives, because we just recognised that was a really important feature or young people said it was really important that they had that. The next slide, Richard, please. Phones, and I just think if you think about how important phones are, it's a place to store your memories, to keep in touch, how it deals with issues of loneliness. The fact the DFE paid for top-ups for and connection for care leavers during the start of lockdown highlights just how important phones are. Friends were always a top source of emotional support for young people that they in all our surveys that we've done. And finally, and interestingly, the importance of pets to young people. Not something you would normally see on a local authority dashboard, pets, but actually, if you think about how important pets are to young people, I think it becomes clear if you're thinking about well-being that knowing whether young people have got pets are really important. And the next slide, please, Richard. So what we're going to hear now is just a short video of young people talking about what makes life good for them. So young people talking about some of the things that have been highlighted in the Your Life Beyond Care survey. So Richard, can you play it, please? So yeah, just to ground us a little bit, young people there talking about what makes life good for them, and the challenge is, in dealing with emotional health and well-being, is how do we help young people in part maintain that, and also help them when they're facing some of those challenges. So in addition to the Your Life Beyond Care survey and the self-assessment, one of the things we were really clear about was that any plans that were developed had to be developed based on, had to be developed with young people. So we set that expectation right at the start when the local authorities were joining us. Obviously, the survey helped identify what made life good for young people. We asked young people to say, what do you think are the priorities local authorities should work on? They should be involved in jointly developing their action plans, and the findings from those action plans should be shared with young people, and young people should be involved in the reviewing of the progress. Now, this was a challenge, and I think if you want to know more, as I said earlier, if you want to know more about that, please do join the previous rounds of videos that are on our website. And if we go on to the next page, please, Richard. So just as part of our work, we had lots of meetings. the picture in the middle was the one we actually did get to meet face to face with colleagues in North Yorkshire under the gazebo at County Hall. You know, local authorities taking endless opportunities to engage with young people, often revolving around food, and obviously the inevitable Mentimeter and online discussions that became the feature of the life over the last couple of years. And the last couple of slides from me, please, Richard. So what was key, one of the key things about the success of New Belongings was actually having champions. You had to have people within your local authority who could open the doors, kick the doors open, wedge the doors open, take those ideas from young people and listen to them and make them, turn them into reality. And we're going to hear from our colleagues in the local authority about how they champion their young people and how they turn those messages into practice. And the next slide, Richard, please. So just quickly from young people about what New Belongings meant to them. This is a wordle that they did with some of our care experience consultants. I just think you can see the choices of words there about the ripple effect. It's about a checker on local authorities, about making change, about action. And the final one from me, I think, is that what happened was local authorities came up with this morass almost of ideas about what they could do to help young people. And I think what we're going to hear now is about how local authorities unpick that, and about how you are. I think there'll be opportunity now for you to say how you're unpicking this morass of ideas in your work. So I think that's if I can stop there, and I'll pass on now to my colleague Dr. Claire Baker to talk about what we mean by emotional health and well-being. Claire, over to you.
Great. Hi everyone, hope you're doing okay this Wednesday lunchtime. And today we've got together to think about how we support and respond to supporting care leavers' emotional health and well-being. But just wanted to take a couple of minutes to think about, well, what do we actually mean by well-being? Different things to different people, but essentially it's about how we're doing. How do we think we are doing? How are we feeling? How's life going for us? And importantly, it is about more than just happiness. It's about, do we feel satisfied, well-being? Are we fulfilled? Do we feel we're making a contribution to our community? And I think well-being is predominantly a positive concept. So it's about experiencing a good life. And you heard Ian explaining that the evidence tools we used in the New Belongings programme really had that central question about what makes life good. And those well-being indicators are what care leavers have told us makes life good, as Ian showed. And of course, well-being's dynamic. It's going to change in relation to different things. So thanks, Richard. The project really focuses on subjective well-being, as I've said, about our own assessments of how we think things are going, about different domains. So happiness with our relationships, happiness, do we feel life has got meaning for us, and are we feeling happy and well at particular times? And I think that is different really to kind of mental health difficulties. And I think sometimes the two concepts can get quite lumped together, which is why we wanted to really focus on that whole breadth of things around emotional well-being. And we see here an offering an explanation about what mental health difficulties might be around kind of according to the defined set of symptoms. It might be more about a kind of more professional judgment, and that might actually differ from the young adult's own assessment. And as I said, Bright Spots really focuses on well-beings and really tuning into how care leavers are feeling. And as a project, we do think that well-being should be really central to the goal of both government and local authorities and society. So if we just looked at the next slide, I found this diagram quite helpful, just in terms of kind of unpicking mental health versus well-being, and that idea that they're perhaps two different constructs rather than being at either end of the same construct. And evidence seems to suggest that young people who have diagnosed mental health problems, you know, with the right support, can still at times have reasonable levels of well-being. So I guess we were proposing that we could think about them as related but overlapping separate concepts. So if we just moved on to the next slide, as you've heard, we have these evidence tools, and it'll be absolutely no surprise to see that what we found was that steep decline in well-being. So young people, young adults, when they were asked how they felt they were doing, after they had left care, you really visually, you can just see it there, that drop off in well-being. So compared to children still in care, adolescents still looked after, care leavers self-reporting a much higher proportion, feeling unhappy, unsafe. Thanks, Richard. And if we were to compare, and we're able to in the project, because we have the general population data from the Office for National Statistics, again, care leavers reporting worse well-being compared to the general population. So I really don't need to make the argument to everybody here about how important it is to focus on care leavers' well-being, and then understanding what that means to young people themselves. Thanks, Richard. And I just we did get quite a lot of questions around COVID and how much that had knocked on the effect, impacted on care leavers' well-being. So we're able to look at some of the statistics, and if you just pressed on Richard now, you can actually see that pre-pandemic, you've got about a quarter of care leavers reporting low life satisfaction. And then when we did the surveys, very much in that early lockdown, the rate stayed really similar. Thanks, Richard. And then for the general population, you can just see that difference. So the general population reporting much lower rates of low life satisfaction. And there was increases for the general population, but they weren't, all the increases tended to be between 1% and sort of 5%. So if we just pushed on, Richard. And I didn't want to have a session around emotional health and well-being without mentioning this group of care leavers. So we do ask a question to young people about whether they feel they have a disability or a long-term health problem. And it's really surprising, I think, that around a quarter of care leavers self-report. That's nearly double the proportion in the general population. And that group of care leavers have much lower well-being, report higher rates of loneliness, less likely to have goals and plans for the future. But because we're talking about this today, I think it's important to hold this group in mind. And interestingly, I'm not sure, you know, our computer database systems always pick up as many young people disabled, but actually when you ask young people, it's a significant group. So I think the next slide is just going to show us the self-assessment, and Ian's talked about this. It's a free tool. It was developed because we don't have any national standards in leaving care. So there's 10 domains, and under each domain there's kind of indicators, and leaving care services local authorities are asked to honestly rate how well they feel they are doing in relation to the different indicators. There's 106 indicators, so it's quite an undertaking to do the tool. And one of the domains is around supporting care leavers' health. So if we just clicked onto the next slide, you will get all these slides, so you'll be able to read it. But the health domain takes you through how well do you actually feel you've got those links established with your adult mental health services. Do your health colleagues kind of meaningfully contribute to pathway planning? So it's an opportunity to, hopefully with health colleagues, go through where you are as a service. And so last couple of slides from me, just focusing on emotional health and well-being. So each local authority who joined us on the New Belongings programme got their results, their survey results from how their care leavers were feeling, and they had their self-assessment, and they took that evidence and created their action plans. Again, we were really pleased to see most local authorities had actions and focus on emotional well-being and worked with their young people on ways to improve the support they were offering. And we've got 3 local authorities today who are going to tell you more about that. And so I think the last slide from me is some work that is still in progress, but having reviewed all of those action plans from the 8 local authorities, we kind of came down on the idea that we can't just focus on supporting emotional well-being in one aspect of young people's lives. So there seems to be maybe 8 stages. So there's something about making sure we're bolstering well-being when our children are still in care. So where's the focus on friendships, hobbies, stability? Something about when children are still in care and they may need specialist support. So have we got that right? And then as we move to our care leavers, again, promoting positive well-being. So we saw some brilliant practice during COVID, yoga sessions online, creative cooking sessions, that whole range of things that young people tell us are important. And then we've got kind of the statutory health support for care leavers, things that are in your local offers, like free prescriptions perhaps, or health passports. And then we felt there was really some actions in the New Belongings plans about supporting our personal advisors, supporting our colleagues. They're often the ones with those key relationships. So we saw actions around kind of helping leaving care workers feel more confident, around supporting their care leavers. And then the other kind of stages were about, getting additional support in via the leaving care services. So we saw actions around designated nurse time increasing, trying to procure mental health workers to be based in the team. And then, of course, you've got enduring issues sometimes, but working alongside with your adult colleagues and making sure you're planning together and supporting your care leavers, joint protocols. And then something about out of hours support, just recognizing that life continues when maybe we're not the 9 to 5. So we thought those 8 stages were really what was coming out of the action plans in terms of all the different things the local authorities were doing. And as I say, we've got 3 local authorities to tell you about some of the things they did, and they link across some of the different stages. So I'm going to hand over to my colleague Emma. We're going to have a bit of interaction, and thanks very much.
You're just on mute, Emma.
I'll start again. Hi, everybody. Before we hear from our colleagues in our local authorities, we just wanted to take a moment to collectively think about how well you're doing and your services are doing, supporting care leavers' emotional health and wellbeing needs. And we've created a Mentimeter. So there are various ways in which you can access it. You can be very techy and use a QR code and just scan it, or you can go to www.menti, which is MENTI.com, and then enter the code 76452630. And when you access it, there will be 3 questions. So thinking about your services, how well do you think you are supporting the emotional health and wellbeing needs of your care leavers? And that's a kind of a ranking of 0 being you don't know, all the way up to 10 that you feel you are completely supporting the emotional needs and well-being of care leavers. And then the next two questions are thinking about one thing that you feel that you are doing well in relation to emotional health and well-being. And then finally, the third question, one thing that you want to be better at in relation to the emotional health and well-being. So hopefully everybody's able to get onto the Menti. I'm hoping one of my colleagues will be able to put the information into the chat so you're able to access it. And then I'm going to share my screen to show you the results. Don't worry, you will get all of these after the webinar. So hopefully you can see that. So this is the first question, which is thinking about your services. How well do you support the emotional health and well-being needs of your care leavers? And as you can see, there's quite a spread of opinions. There are people that are saying kind of on a 6 or 7, or 5, 6 or 7, so doing quite well with support. Others saying that there might be more progress to go, but hopefully it's reassuring to see that everybody is on a journey and that everybody is thinking about how they can support the emotional health and well-being needs of care leavers. And then if we go on to the next question. So these are the things that you are doing well. So there's lots of comments about listening to the voice of young people and checking in on care leavers. There's some things about activities, getting together with care leavers, outings, being there as a listening and consistent person, referring to other services, supporting safe spaces and helping to reduce isolation by holding regular groups and positive opportunities. Being a champion to improve the health services of young people, that's very important. Good relationships with PAs and young people. We find in our surveys that a lot of care leavers say that their relationship with their PA is very important. Lots of ideas here. Being caring and understanding of challenges. Oh, a pilot and free travel pass to improve attendance to appointments. Engage in leisure activities to see friends and family. Trauma-informed services up to 25 years commissioned to meet transitional needs. So there's some amazing work going on and some great ideas here. And again, I will give you all of these when we finish the webinar. And then the one thing that we want to do better. So again, there's practitioners, mental health practitioners that are based in leaving care services, having more specialist resources, that there's better mental health services for young people that are 18 plus, that we're able to broaden our reach to young people, that we're able to work in a holistic way, and that we link with other services. And trauma-informed approaches, more training needed, more mental health first aid training. Again, some brilliant ideas here, but the general feeling is about kind of working together, having specialist services, making sure that we are supporting young people to get the right support, and recognising that care leavers, we're all corporate parents to care leavers, and that we should be working better together to support young people. So thank you so much for that. That was really interesting. I'm now going to pass back to Ian, who's going to introduce our first presentation. Thank
you very much for that. Richard, can you just pull the slides back up, please? I think we've got Aaron is going to be, I think, is our first presenter. So one of the things I wanted to do was just to ground the conversation, because we talked a little bit about what about the general ideas, but I think just listening to Aaron and just thinking about what Dr. Claire Baker was saying about the 24% of young people who think they might have a disability or a long-term health condition that's affecting their lives. And you know, the question is, how are we meeting the needs of those young people? And I think Aaron, we all know Aaron. We all work with Aaron's in slightly different guises, but I think just some really powerful message now from Aaron about what life has been like for him. So if we could play the video, Richard, please. Hopefully we'll get past the spinning dial in a moment. Clearly, there's a bit of a technical issue here. Richard, do you think we should just move on to the first presentation from Tracey and see if we can wind Aaron up a bit more and get him working a bit better later? Okay, so apologies for that. I think you know, the inevitability of the online world that we all live in now. But you know, hope you will be sent. We will send you the material from today. Please do have a look at this. If you look at one thing, watch this. It is this video. It's such a powerful message that Aaron is sharing. Really beautifully put as well. So please do have a look at that. So what I'd like to do next is to introduce Tracey Taylor-Waite, who's the aftercare team manager in Oldham, and Oldham being one of our 8 authorities been working with. And I think what I think is really great about Tracey's work is about how they've recognised the importance of the relationship young people have with their personal advisors or leaving care workers, and built on that, and some incredible work around a really difficult group to engage of young mums who've lost children to the process of adoption, who are having children placed away from them. So Tracey, can I hand over to you now, please?
Yeah, no, thank you, Ian. And hi everybody, hi everyone. It's lovely to meet you all. Yeah, no, if we want to start the slides, we'll kick off. I know you've got a few other slides to get through. Hopefully everyone can hear me. Yeah, thumbs up. Yep.
That's fine,
Great.
Tracey.
Brilliant. So I'm just going to say something quickly about the Baker-Dixon, which I know sounds really, really scary, is a little bit, a lot of pages on it, but it really helped us in Oldham actually to focus on areas that we felt we needed to improve for the care leavers of Oldham. One of them was definitely around our engagement and co-production and trying to get some enthusiasm, I think, from our young people to really give us that engagement that we wanted. So we worked from that first Baker-Dixon to try and address some of the issues. Actually, one of them was around our personal advisors saying, look, this is just so challenging. You know, we've got so many young people on our caseload. We want to do all this lovely richness of work with care leavers, but actually we just don't have time. So we really got a buy-in from senior leadership team. We managed to drop caseloads to 22, still higher than I would have liked, but it was a definite improvement. And I think staff really felt that it just gave them a little bit of wiggle room to spend some more time with their young people. So that was one of the first things that we did. We had during the pandemic, we had a really awful incident where one of our care leavers, she just didn't want to be in the world anymore, and he sort of followed through with quite a strong plan to not be. It rocked the team, it rocked absolutely everybody, and I think one of the outcomes was that people began to be really frightened actually about talking with young people about some of that emotional upset and distress that they were going through, often from earlier childhood experiences. So we tried to sort of really invest with the team, employed somebody to come and do some assist first aid training with the team, which helped. It started to sort of open the door up to some of those conversations. And then one of the big areas that we tried to focus on around emotional well-being in the service was to really try and start to educate a little bit more our social work teams about being 18 not being the final destination. That's not a point where everybody just goes, okay, well, we're done now, so we've done everything we need to do. It was about future planning. It's about preparing our young people for the world ahead. How are we building resilience in those young people? So we attended a number of social work forums to try and really raise the profile of the work that needed to be done with some of our care experienced young people. And then alongside that, we really looked at doing some of the stuff that we might call the softer stuff, but actually, gosh, it made such an impact. So we really went all in to develop our tea time chat, sort of drop-in sessions. It wasn't, it wasn't a session where we were delivering anything. It was a session where we were just going, come and see us, we'd love to see you, come and have a brew, we'll get something to eat, and we're not going to throw budgeting work at you, we just want to see you and say hello. And that went really, really well. Our young people really engaged with that. And then from the back of that, we start, because what our young people were saying was, do you know what, I'd really like to actually do something. I'm dead interested in Thai boxing. We even had one young person who was really interested in MMA. I can't tell you the risk assessments that were involved there, but so we developed lots of other activities. So one of them, we had some of our young people going up to the top of Snowdon. We did a bit of a sponsor walk. It was a real challenge. We had a group of young people that went off to Thai boxing. We were super lucky because we had a team member whose partner had he was some specialist in the martial arts who offered us a special deal. So that was super. Really helpful, and it genuinely really did help us to build up stronger relationships with our young people. And I know you can see a couple of comments on there, but the one that always strikes me was from one of our PAs who said that young people were just waiting all week for the sessions, and on the day of the session the phone would just be going constantly, with our young people saying, don't forget, you're picking me up, we're doing Thai boxing today. And so it was really lovely. It really paid dividends actually. So that was that. And then one of the other things and again, as part of the Baker Dixon and all the work that we were doing with Core and Voice, it gave me time to sit and think about, again, our cohort of young people, what was the makeup. And one of the things that I realised was that we had quite a high group of young women, predominantly, who had been affected by adoption, who'd been through care proceedings and had had their children removed at very young ages. My background was in adoption. And what I thought was, oh my gosh, all this grief and loss that actually, 18, 19, 20, 21, absolutely unresolved, often young people not able to access some of the support from the post-adoption support networks because they feel that's not for them. So what we decided to do was come up with an 8-week programme in conjunction with a regional adoption agency that we have in the Northwest called Now. So we ran the programme for 8 weeks. Originally, I think we were probably overly ambitious. We thought maybe 8 young people to attend, but we got 3 in the end, which I know seems really low, but on reflection, oh my gosh, this course meant such a lot for those 3 young women. I'm really pleased. I think we could have probably had 5, but I'm so pleased it was a smaller group. We had it as a really close group. Exactly the same staff members attending with the group to run through sessions, because we knew that relationships were building up through the sessions, and we were working through sort of a number of things. So, you know, setting the ground rules, questions like, you know, what is a home, what is a family? That meant so many different things to our care experience young people. We ran
through them. If you're not, are you going on this as well? Unless do you want to go in there?
Sorry, I don't know who that is on there.
But if you can, if you're not coming back, but yeah, we could.
Okay, I think they've gone on mute now. So we actually even had to increase the length of time on the sessions, because young people were getting so much out of the sessions, the relationships that they were building. And there was a real kind of peer support that grew up between these 3 young women who had all had children placed for adoption and suffered that loss that comes along with that whole process of adoption. So we worked through some of the practicalities around letterbox contact, writing letter to your child's adoptive parents. And then we also did some work around family trees and understanding our own life story, which was, gosh, it was visceral, I think, actually. Some of the pain, and also some of the acknowledgement that some of those young women had about their own lives, how that had affected them as they became parents. And it almost felt like there was a kind of a shift of guilt, if that makes sense. What we really felt was that these young women just held an absolute ball of guilt and pain around the terrible things that, you know, people had said that they'd done, which is why they couldn't keep their children, without any of the sort of background understanding of actually they were amazing and they were inspirational, but they were in really difficult circumstances. And, you know, some of these were the reasons why. Absolutely some phenomenal sessions. We're really focusing on health and well-being. So as part of the 8 sessions, again, we made sure that our young people had sort of a pampering session, you know, something that said, we really value you. You know, we made sure that there were little memory boxes and gift boxes for all those little pieces of artwork that our young people were doing around their children and what they'd been through. And we really made sure that we gave people enough time to reflect, to come out of the session, to cry. For some of our young people, it was the first time that they'd actually cried, you know, so a real kind of relief and an opportunity to speak in a safe space about, you know, what that means to somebody to have their child removed, and then for, you know, the court to say, actually, this child is never going to come back and live in your care. We're going to place, you know, with an adoptive parent, which is such a hard thing for anybody to sort of get their heads around, really, isn't it? So we did a lot around grief and loss and resilience and recovery from grief and loss, and that actually that's not a one-stop shop. You don't need to stay there. It's okay to feel happy. It's okay to have a happy day. You don't need to beat yourself up about that. We did lots of really practical sessions, kind of salt jars that laid layers of somebody's life, that sort of opened up the door to talk about those different layers of somebody's life. Family trees were absolutely artistic endeavours, you know, so we made sure that our young people had paints and crayons and all the things that they'd probably not had access to as children. They had some terrible histories themselves, the 3 girls who attended this course. Yeah, so yes, so that was us really. We had some absolutely super feedback from the young people that attended, and some amazing stories. So just to tell you, one of the young women that attended, she had a child placed from adoption, was really struggling with that, but had actually gone on. She was an older care leaver. She'd actually gone on to care for another child and was doing absolutely a wonderful job. She'd reconnected with her family. You know, Granny had her little one when she came along to the meetings. But actually, for the other two young people that had only just come out of court proceedings, children were about to be placed for adoption, it really gave them hope to think, okay, you know, I things can change. Things can change. Life is not one fixed point. So yeah, so that was us, but some really positive outcomes, I think, for those young women from that course. That's it. Any questions? Oh, thank you.
Oh, that's brilliant, Tracey. And when I hear you talk about that, one of the points that really resonates for me, and you'd identified those 13 care leavers in this situation, and you know, could have been invited to come along. In the end, it was right for 3, but the level of kind of investment and commitment, it was just what was needed. And in a way, the numbers are by the by. You know, this was a really important focus on well-being and all of the associated things for those young women. And I know you said they formed quite an ongoing friendship as well. Just I will dig out for you the comments in the chat, but people just noting how moving and how the work is. And just a question sorry, I was just going to say, just a quick question about will the course continue, or would you just say a little bit about future plans, if that's all right?
Yeah, so it definitely will continue. We're just waiting to do another piece of reflection with our colleagues in the regional adoption team because I think we learned from this one. So, you know, things like it was definitely better as a smaller group. Definitely making sure that you've got enough staff there. I mean, we did, obviously, because it was a bit smaller, to really support those young people who were having a really low day, depending on what week we were on. The weeks that we knew were challenging, to make sure that we may be doing some lovely activities. So we, you know, for example, you know, we all went out for a meal, and you know, all those kinds of things kind of outside of the group. It was a real sort of package around these 8 weeks. So yeah, we will definitely be running the course again, but it's going to be into next year now, just because of sort of time pressures and all the rest of it. But yeah, we will definitely be running it again.
Right. And a couple of quick questions that I'll group together. Did yourselves in the Leaving Care Service, did you write the course and structure it yourselves?
Yes.
And
Yeah. Well, we
about
got
health colleagues and how they supported it.
So actually no support from health colleagues, although we did look at that originally, but we couldn't get any buy-in from health colleagues at the time that we'd piloted this. But our regional adoption agency, their post-adoption support group lead, they were absolutely fabulous. So yeah, so we sat together with the regional adoption agency. We worked out a draft of the pilot 8 weeks, who would do what would happen, what the activities were going to be, what resources we needed. So we had everything sort of planned between the two agencies to deliver it. With different skill sets across the two agencies, which worked really well, actually.
Great. And just a quick question on when you were talking about your first part of the action plan, really focused on relationship, you know, relational ways of working and different things, and you'd managed to, because you need capacity, so you'd managed to bring the numbers of young people your PAs work with down to 22. Somebody just wondering what that came down from. If you could answer that quick, that would be amazing.
So that came down from 26, 27. You know, and if I'm being super honest, at this point, we're growing again. So the numbers are growing again. But I think, and I'm just going to put this out there, I think because of the spotlight that's been on us, because of the work that we've done with Core and Voice, it feels like I've got a senior leadership team in a different place now. So we're actually looking at a bit of a restructure in the team, so we can bring those caseloads down again, because I've got the evidence to show that helps with our relationships and building resilience for our young people. So it's given us a real sort of bouncing block, really, to sort of say, no, look, we've done this is the work that we did, we've got to get back there again, we've got to be bringing those caseloads down. If we need to look at a restructure, let's do that, because we know this works.
Fantastic. Thanks for that transparency. I think lots of colleagues on the call will recognise those challenges and thanks. Speaker, but thank you so much, Tracey. Always enjoy listening, so thank you.
Okay, no worries.
Okay, Tracey and Claire, thank you very much for that. And I think we'll just move on now to our colleagues from North Yorkshire. So I'm really pleased that Maggie Allen, who's the team manager in the Leaving Care Service, and Joe Wood, who's the opportunity manager, can join us. And I think just pick up that theme about how important leaving care workers are to young people, and how North Yorkshire have looked at that, used that evidence and that knowledge to start to develop and enhance their support. So with no more ado, I'll pass over to yourselves, Joe and Maggie.
Thanks, Ian. Can you have the next slide, Richard, please? I've heard Tracey talk about that group before, and I still find it really inspiring, really. I think it's fantastic, fantastic stuff that's going on in Oldham. And interesting enough, the themes around support for care leavers from their own care experience community resonated as well. This is our poster we had from our Care Leavers Can celebration event, which we do annually. And from that event, we found we've been building a care experience community. And example this year was that a young person whose siblings are in care and they've been in care for a long time came away from that event and said, I realised I wasn't alone, my experience wasn't just mine. And she went back to her college and started a blog around being in care, and kind of built a little community in a college as well. So that's a bit of an aside, but I just wanted to mention that. So do you have the next slide, Richard, again, please? So again, the feedback from the survey was really useful for us, as I think every authority felt. And we had 4 areas, one of which was focusing on relationships, which was a bit of a bright spot for us, but we knew we wanted to be able to do more. Again, around support with learning new skills and opportunities, and again, more chance to meet as care experienced young people informally, which I've just chatted about, really. So we're going to pick sort of 3 areas. Always Here, which I'm going to talk about. Jo's going to talk about some of her role in the opportunity broker role and the manager role, and some of the developments that came from that role. So if we go to the next slide, please. Always Here is really our offer to care experienced young people, so they've not got that cliff edge of having to leave our service. We're going past 25 with this, and it's not something that we need to panic about, really. I think when we first discussed this idea, I felt, oh, crikey, we've asked a lot from our teams. We're always asking a lot from our teams. How can I go to them and say, right, young people struggle sometimes when they're leaving our service. The mental health can go down, they panic a bit, they're worried about the support that not just comes from us, but the whole support network, really. But actually, what my team said was, that's great, because we're doing it already, not in a formal sense, not something we're discussing in supervision, but we've got a very stable staff team, which I'm very grateful for. And it means that young people, if there were maybe things were happening in their lives, good or bad, they'd maybe ring the worker because they just want a little bit of advice, and that was happening anyway. So what we actually said was, well, why don't we formalise that and let young people know that when they leave our service, I don't like the term, but when they're the case is closed, they can still come back and share that experience with us. So our Always Here offer means that young people can come back to us, they could ring us, they could ask for information, but we're not putting a plan in there. There's no pathway plan, but as we say, we can help you plan if that's what's needed. We won't chase you, but you're there if you need us, and we love hearing the good news stories too. So how are you getting on? You know, people ring and say, oh, you never guess what, I'm going to get married, I'm having my child, I've graduated, all that kind of thing. So that's been really good. What we actually did was we're on LCS at North Yorkshire. Other authorities might be and others won't be, but we created a form which was a post 25 form, an Always Here form. So basically, if young people needed ring us, then what we would do, we'd or contact us. They can either contact us their last worker, or they can contact the duty number that's given to them when they leave the service. They'd ring us, and then they would we'd record that information. The next slide shows some of the information that we've captured over the last year. So over the last year, we've recorded 101 contacts. I think it's actually more than that, but this is just what we've got on the system. So we have the different areas that people can record it on. So things like request for advice might be things like, I've just had a letter from housing, I don't know what it means, I've got rent arrears. And basically we will refer people on. So we're not taking on young people, you know, we're not taking on that long-term piece of work. We refer on and make sure that they've got the right service. I say it's an over 25 offer, but if they decide at 21 they don't want to continue with our service, we will give them the Always Here offer. And then if somebody rings over 21 and say they rang for contacted us, but and it wasn't solved within 1 or 2 sort of contacts, we would then say, listen, we think we probably need to open you up again and do a proper kind of back in contact with you. So we'd do that as well. What I really like about this is the sharing of achievements high. We've got 20 young people who just rang us just to tell us how great things were going, and that's great. You know, it's brilliant to hear about that from young people. On the other side, we've got 7 loneliness, which again, you know, is difficult to hear, but I think that actually shows how our practice model is very much about building up support networks, inviting people along to some of our care experience stuff, but also ensuring their own support networks with friends and family is strong. The distressed, obviously that's a really difficult one, but it meant that at least by contacting us, we could refer them on and get support in and check in on them. One thing we do as well is it means that we are talking about the Always Here at supervision. So workers have a chance to check in with their manager, and the managers can keep an oversight on that, which again, I think again, a lot of teams will know that, you know, people will be in contact because that's what happens. But this is making sure that it's within that, you know, our practice and our model, and that it's open and talked about, and that people aren't feeling, oh, I'm having to do this and I'm not talking about it. I think again it means that we can monitor as well how much, you know, how much work we're getting through Always Here, and is it something we need to think about differently. But at the moment it's manageable, even though caseloads, as I think is common with all teams, they are rising, and you know, teams are worried about the general caseload. But again, we've tried to make sure that Always Here is very simple. We're not wanting to complicate it. It's a very simple idea, and we've managed to keep it like that over the last year since it's been operational, and it's very much focused on the relationship side. And again, I think, you know, what we've heard this morning is very much about if wellbeing is very much about relationships, isn't it? It's about your family, friends, and positive relationships. So again, that's where it's really helped with us in terms of the wellbeing for our care leavers. I'm going to hand over to Jo now, who'll talk a little bit about the opportunity worker and manager role. Jo.
Hi, yeah, I'm Jo Wood. I'm just here to do a bit of a whistle top thing of an activity that we did held at the street sessions to tie in with the wellbeing concerns. So there's been something in the chat asked about the role of an opportunity broker. So it's quite hard to actually sum it up, to be fair, but just some ideas here, but it's sort of, it's broader and wider than the E2E work that is also undertaken. A lot of it is about networking with providers in the community and then doing the matching that, you know, if you know, and you obviously you build relationships with people in the community and providers and whatever they're putting on, and it's matching that with the young person. That's, as we know, that's really important, because we put them somewhere where we don't feel as though they will engage or benefit from the course, or have a personality clash or difficulties. It's just not going to benefit anybody. So that's quite an important role of it. Finding funding for some, especially for the sort of the older young people, care experienced young people, that if they want to do something and it doesn't sort of fit in with the authorities funding, we might need to top up, we might need some extra. So it's sorting that extra funding out there. So it's really quite a broad, and that's just a bit of an overview. A lot of participation stuff and group work stuff and working alongside the teams, really. If we could have the next slide, please. So this basically is a session that followed from session 1, street session. And this second session was, it was quite a structured course on building confidence and skills, and also a second strand of it was about helping them manage their emotions more effectively, and what we wanted to look at was about increasing that confidence, self-esteem and self-worth, and reducing isolation. Have the next slide, please. I've got a little bit of a fuller thing on this other screen, so if I keep looking away, it's because I'm reading the fuller slide. Basically, that just gives you an idea of the content and the delivery of it. Yeah, local, where we held it is an ideal place. It's where we used to be based, actually, so a lot of people know it. And it was run over 10 weeks, as it says there. And we also had the another activity of what going on the health theme as well, walk and talk and a celebration meal. Have the next slide, please. This just give you, oh no, sorry, these are outcomes. I've got a different slide. Yeah, these are the outcomes there from the slide. Again, I think we've sort of mentioned this before. We didn't have high numbers, but what the people that did attend really did enjoy it, and we did move people forward in a positive direction. Next slide, please. So this is the, move up with mine, yeah, unexpected outcomes, really. It is about, again, it's those, we had a group of unaccompanied that joined us unexpectedly, they clearly struggled with the first 2 sessions that were more structured around the confidence building and the activities to help manage their emotions. So they decided to, well, 4 of them decided to join us just for the cooking, and one of them wanted to maintain and join us for the whole of the sessions. But this was really good. It worked really well. Totally, like I said, totally unexpected. But the group, what we found was that our those non-accompanied asylum seekers, those care leavers that were already part of the group, were really, really good with the unaccompanied, and how the group formed, and lots of helping out, lots of sign language. But again, cooking, it was quite universal. We shared recipes, we asked them to choose recipes from their own countries, and it worked really, really well. And among this was, that came out, as it says there, was that because it gives you the opportunities to chat informally and get to know them a little bit more. And one of the main things that came out of this was the love of football among a lot of our young people, and then that enabled us then to look at, which we did do. We ran another programme after this, shortly after this, with some football sessions, and that's going to be running again in the new year. So it's the other things that come out of these sessions as well. And the last one, please. I think we've touched on it actually in a couple of the slides that you've done earlier, and I saw this, no idea who wrote it, but I just love the quotes. So helping one person might not change the whole world, but it might change the world for one person. So I sort of go more with that now than we don't go for big numbers. You know, if we get them, that's great, but equally, a bit like what Tracey said from Oldham with the, you know, the young people that you do help, you know, it's really important, and it's really important to them, and I think that's why we should keep doing it and not focus on the actual numbers of people.
Can I just say as well, sorry, coming in, that the work's been funded by partnership with Anglo-American Mine Company in Scarborough. So they obviously have their social action programme, and they've been very supportive in terms of helping our young people and the programmes that have been running. So that's very much around part of the opportunity manager role, is reaching out and getting that local business support, and that works in terms of our own internal stuff, like with our own North Yorkshire directorates for getting people into work experience and things like that. So it's a whole package really that the opportunity manager and brokers work with to ensure that we're kind of opening those opportunities that, as Jo said, a much wider than just employment training and education, but also a little bit softer as well, which is sort of some of the street work that's been going on.
I think as well what was really good was that it gave the opportunity for the leaving care caseworkers to bring young people along to the events as well, and you know, they might not come for the whole session, but they might come for the cooking for it, you know, for a couple, I might come to a couple, and the feedback from our leaving care caseworkers were that it was so great to do an activity with young people, and that actually it was really effective use of their time, because they, you know, they were there and they saw two people in that session, and what they got out of it, the other things they get out of it, again, was, you know, was things that we don't count, but we were sort of seeing go forward. So that was really, you know, really sort of effective use of their time too. But yeah, local business is excellent, but yeah, very, it just gives you that more flexibility, doesn't it, to look at the things. Yeah. It's a very broad overview of it. It was obviously a lot more detailed, but it was good.
That's fantastic. Thank you both. And a couple of comments in the chat. Somebody just really loving the title, The Opportunity Broker, because it just really speaks to the fact it could go in so many directions, and you know, it links to what young people are passionate about, and that broker, Jo, being there to sort of support you to you know, around those opportunities. And somebody asking about the funding for that role, and how you're employed, because we know funding pots are sometimes easier to get from outside of the local authority. Would you just be able to say a bit about whether you're a local authority employee? Would that be okay, Jo?
Yeah, I'm employed by the local authority. Was it funding initially from Partners in Practice, Maggie, was it initially?
Yeah, we initially got some roles in the team that was enabled from Partners in Practice funding from the Department of Education, and those roles came from there. But when that funding ended, we decided, because of the impact that we're having, that we would mainstream some of the roles, which is where we've got two opportunity brokers and Jo's the opportunity manager now. Again, it's a choice we made as a team. So that funding meant that obviously potentially reduced our numbers of, you know, leaving care caseworkers. But again, because the role isn't generally case holding, it means that the focus can be different, because we all know, you know, when you've got your young people to deal with, a crisis can divert people off. So there's a bit more flexibility in those roles. But yeah, I mean, we do that stuff around being able to fundraise from other, if you're not a local authority member of staff. I suppose the role isn't to necessarily fundraise to bring money in. I mean, obviously Anglo-American are supporting us in that sense, but there might be grant funding for young people and different pockets of money that the opportunity brokers have been able to access, and link into other, well, saying that, actually Anglo-American, we've got a scheme going now where they will fund some support for individual young people as well. So that's worked, but again, it's all within the scope of the project. So it's almost an additional bit of an internship we've kind of done it as. So this year we've kind of been able to use things quite flexibly.
It's about
And-
sourcing as well. When we've got somebody, a young person that's interested in something, it might not be in any relation to work or education or anything, but it might be. I mean, when I first started, a few years ago now, we were struggling with one young person who was struggling with his emotional health, and to sort of try and inspire him and just try and help him along. I met with him and the caseworker, and managed to get an understanding of what he was interested in and what he did as a child and what he was interested in. It was football, and we arranged for him to go visit his favourite football ground, which was Chelsea, and have a tour, etc. So it was really it was really a different thing that we've not sort of done before, but because of the actual role, we were able to spend that time and research it and try and get a few freebies on the way and what have you, and make it sort of not a too expensive activity, but had a very positive outcome. He then went on to spend some time over the summer as a football coach with a local football team. So it's that sort of thing as well. It's linking in with the whole wider aspect of what's available out there.
Fantastic, and absolutely kind of speaking to that, there's 8 different areas where we're thinking about well-being, really broadly. And I think, Ian, you're going to introduce Wandsworth, a very different local authority to North Yorkshire in lots of respects, but Wandsworth are going to talk to us about their work around emotional health and well-being. Ian, I'll hand over to you.
Claire, thank you very much for that, and thanks to our colleagues in North Yorkshire. But so we've got a video from, and hopefully we'll work this time. We've got a video from Nora Dudley, who's the service manager at Future First. I'm not going to show it all because we're just slightly pressed for time. But what she's going to talk about is the role of a specialist personal advisor. The bit you're not going to hear, but will be available to you afterwards, is the fact that they've managed to get a post from an adult worker who works as part of the team, and he does the social care assessments, care act assessments, sorry, of young people possibly needing adult care support. And what they've found is, by having that specialist worker, the trauma and difficulties that young people experience through the care process is more reflected in the Care Act assessment, and I think greater access to adult social care has been achieved. They've also, you'll be able to hear when you view the video yourself, she talks about the fact that they had 2 0.5 full-time equivalent counsellors, one of whom is a traditional counsellor, but the other one was they looked at their group of young people, and they have a significant number of young people who are heavily involved in gang-related activity. So they set up a sort of this person to be a sort of quasi outreach worker, and bring a more informal youth work approach to the work, to engage with that group of young people. So I think you're beginning to see the thread there about specialist services to meet the needs of those specialist groups. So, Tracey, you heard about, you've now you'll be able to hear more about the Wandsworth experience. But if we play Nora now, it's about 8 minutes. You're going to hear about the specialist PA role. It does take a moment or 2 to warm up, actually, just before she starts. we'll stop the Nora video there. As I say, she goes on to talk more then about those other services, because I think one of the things that's clear, and I think Dr. Baker pointed it out, Claire pointed it out in her presentation, was that it isn't just one solution here. It isn't just having that specialist mental health personal advisor that's going to solve all your problems around supporting young people with their emotional health and well-being. So I'll just pick up. There's one question that was in the chat about that. Was what was the qualification of the of this specialist PA? My understanding, well, I do know for a fact they were a qualified social worker. I don't think they had a particularly, they hadn't done specialist, they weren't specialist training, they hadn't had specialist training in mental health, but what they had was a real interest in that. And I think they'd done further further training, you know, in sort of therapeutic approaches. So I think they'd done some work perhaps with perhaps with the Institute of Family Therapy type approaches to give her that specialist awareness. So so I hope you'll be able to view that video. It will be part of the package that we'll send out to you via email at the end of this session, along with the Aaron video and all the presentations that we've had today. And we'll also be putting all that material up on our website as well. So if we just move on now, because we've just got a couple of minutes left, just to share with you opportunities really to continue the learning from the New Belongings programme. So there is an evaluation report that's available, and I think that has some interesting stuff in it, and I think Claire pulled some of that out in her presentation around the impact of the pandemic. And I think there's some overview there about the Your Life Beyond Care findings and how that has changed or not changed, how that has changed actually between the two periods of the survey that we did. I think one of the things that's absolutely clear through this is the importance of understanding what makes life good for your young people. And I think all three of our presenters today talked about the real value that the Your Life Beyond Care, the Bright Spots programme gave to their work. And I think when you have that data that a quarter of your care leavers feel they have a disability, that is such a powerful fact. And yet, how many of those will receive adult social care support? Probably low single figures. And therefore, the challenge, you can use that data then to say, well, what are we doing perhaps with that 20% or possibly more that feel they've got a disability but are not receiving adult social care support? We all know them, but I think it does actually start to put numbers against some of those views and gut feelings and that professional knowledge that you've got as workers. So I think that's really helpful. The Baker-Dixon self-assessment, you can find that link on our website as well. And finally, the examples from today's practice have been written up on our resource hub. So this is a place where we gather together case examples, both written up of short videos or links to reports, etc., that of work that either we're doing at Core and Voice or that our partner agencies through the Bright Spots programme and New Belongings are doing. And I think finally, just one final slide. So, for instance, this is one of the slides that Nora would have been talking to around the range of services that they're offering within Wandsworth. So just an example of the kind of material you can get or you can source on our website. So as a final point, I'd just like to particularly thank our colleagues from Tracey from Oldham, Joe and Maggie from North Yorkshire, and Nora as well for their presentations. I think been absolutely great. I think provided a real richness to the discussion. So I hope you've valued their inputs, and I think it'd been just like to say thank you very much for that. And Also to Claire for giving that overview of the services of the findings. So as I say, this is our third and final webinar based on the New Belongings programme. And yeah, I'd just like to thank you. I know, looking at the names, many of you have attended all three of them. I hope you found them really helpful. And I say, do keep following the New Belongings journey. And if you want to discuss with us how you could use those approaches more directly in your work, you've got our contact details. Do drop us an email, and we'll be happy to discuss how we could help you use New Belongings work in your locality. Great. So look, thank you all very much indeed, and I hope the rest of your day goes well. Thank you all. Bye.